In the Bible, Hagar is a significant figure primarily mentioned in the book of Genesis. She plays a central role in the story of Abraham and Sarah. Moreover, Hagar is mentioned in the Bible as the mother of Ishmael, who is considered one of the patriarchs in the Abrahamic religions, particularly in Islam. In the book of Genesis, Hagar is introduced as an Egyptian maidservant in the household of Sarai and Abram, later known as Sarah and Abraham. As an Egyptian, she likely came from a different cultural background than her masters. The verses related to Hagar's introduction and Sarais proposal can be found in Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 to 4, NIV. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to what Sarai said. Sarai, Abram's wife, is unable to have children, which is a source of distress for her. In the cultural context of the time, having children was highly valued, and infertility was often seen as a significant issue. So, faced with her inability to conceive, Sarai comes up with an unconventional solution. She suggests to Abram that he should have a child with her maidservant Hagar, as a way to build a family. This proposal is reflective of the cultural practices of that time, where a child born through a servant could be considered legally and socially as a child of the mistress. Hagar, as a servant, likely had limited agency in the situation. While the text does not explicitly mention Hagar's feelings or consent, it was common in that cultural context for a servant to follow the wishes of her mistress. Thus, Hagar becomes a crucial part of Sarai and Abram's attempt to fulfill God's promise of descendants. Hagar becomes pregnant as a result of this arrangement. While this might have initially seemed like a solution to Sarai's problem, it sets the stage for complications and interpersonal conflicts within the household. Genesis chapter 16, verses 5 to 6, NIV. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. After Hagar becomes pregnant with Abram's child, tensions rise between her and Sarai. Sarai blames Abram for the situation, feeling despised by Hagar. Abram, in a seemingly passive role, tells Sarai to deal with Hagar as she sees fit. Sarai then mistreats Hagar, causing her to flee. This episode highlights the complex emotions and power dynamics within the household. Hagar, initially following Sarai's directive to bear a child, faces mistreatment when the situation becomes emotionally charged. On 2 occasions, Hagar encounters the angel of the Lord in the wilderness. The first time is when she flees from Sarai during her pregnancy, and the second time is when she and her son Ishmael are sent away. In both instances, God provides comfort, assurance, and promises for Ishmael's future, indicating that God has a plan for them despite their difficult circumstances. Now let's explore the first incident where Hagar encounters the angel of the Lord and receives God's promises. Genesis chapter 16, verses 7 to 13, NIV. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, Where have you come from, and where are you going?" "I am running away from my mistress Sarai," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. You are now pregnant and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." The first encounter occurs when Hagar, pregnant and mistreated by Sarai, flees into the wilderness. The angel of the Lord finds her, instructs her to return to Sarai, and promises to increase her descendants exceedingly. Hagar is given a specific name for her son Ishmael, meaning God hears, signifying that God has heard her distress. The angel also prophesies about Ishmael's nature and future challenges, portraying him as a free-spirited and independent individual with a complex relationship with others. Hagar's response, "You are the God who sees me," reflects her acknowledgement of God's presence and care in her difficult circumstances. The verses related to the birth of Ishmael can be found in Genesis chapter 16, verses 15 to 16 NIV. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. While Ishmael's birth fulfills Sarai's desire for a child, it also introduces tension into the household. The complexities arise from the unconventional nature of the situation, using a maidservant as a surrogate mother, and the subsequent emotional and relational challenges between Sarai and Hagar. However, Sarai, who was initially unable to have children and thought to be too old, miraculously becomes pregnant, as promised by God. In Genesis 17, God assured Abram that Sarai would have a son despite their old age. When Isaac, their promised son, is born, their names change. Sarai becomes Sarah and Abram becomes Abraham. This birth is a clear sign that God keeps his promises, showing his faithfulness to the covenant with Abraham. However, after the birth of Isaac, things change in the household. Isaac is considered the legitimate heir, as promised by God. This shift in status affects Hagar because Isaac's birth means he is the chosen child to continue God's special agreement with Abraham, and this becomes the main focus in the family. In Genesis 21, when Sarah sees Ishmael mocking Isaac, she becomes concerned about the inheritance and demands that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away. Genesis chapter 21, verse 10, NIV. Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. Thus Sarah, seeing Ishmael mocking Isaac, insists that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away to secure Isaac's inheritance. However, Abraham is distressed by this request because Ishmael is also his son. Here, God intervenes, instructing Abraham to listen to Sarah but reassuring him that he will make a nation out of Ishmael. So, despite the distressing circumstances, Abraham follows Sarah's wishes, providing Hagar with supplies and sending her away. The decision to send Hagar and Ishmael away reflects the social and cultural importance of securing the inheritance for the legitimate son Isaac. Hagar becomes a victim of the circumstances, facing exile due to the familiar strife. In Genesis chapter 21, verses 14 to 21, Hagar and Ishmael are sent away, and they enter a challenging period of wandering in the desert of Beersheba. Genesis chapter 21, verses 14 to 16, NIV. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bowshot away. For she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. Abraham provides Hagar with limited provisions, emphasizing the challenging nature of their journey. Hagar and Ishmael entered the harsh desert of Beersheba, a dry and arid region known for its challenging conditions. The diminishing water supply intensifies their predicament, and Hagar, overwhelmed with the thought of Ishmael's potential death from dehydration, distances herself and begins to sob. This illustrates the desperate circumstances they face during their wandering. However, the second time Hagar encounters the angel of the Lord occurs after Hagar and Ishmael are sent away with limited provisions. Genesis chapter 21, verses 15 to 21, NIV. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What is matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. Thus, in the wilderness, when their water supply runs out and they face the prospect of death, God hears Ishmael's cries. The angel of God reassures Hagar, instructs her to lift Ishmael up, and promises to make him into a great nation. God opened Hagar's eyes to a well of water, providing a solution to their immediate need. This encounter reinforces the divine promise made earlier about Ishmael's future and highlights God's continued care for Hagar and her son in their distress. The narrative concludes by emphasizing God's continued presence with Ishmael as he grows up in the desert. Despite the challenging circumstances of their wandering, God's promise to make Ishmael into a great nation begins to unfold. This episode of wandering in the desert of Beersheba serves as a taste of faith for Hagar and Ishmael, highlighting their dependence on God's provision in the wilderness. It also underscores the theme of divine intervention and promises. The narrative demonstrates that even in moments of uncertainty, God's promises bring hope and purpose to the journey of those who trust in Him. To conclude, Hagar's story is one of hardship, resilience, and divine intervention. Despite being a secondary figure in the biblical narrative, her experiences contribute to the unfolding of God's promises and the establishment of significant lineages. So friends, that's all for today. If you like our presentation, please press the button of like and subscribe to our channel, Palette of the Past. Thank you.